My husband wiped out my entire bank account while I lay unconscious in a hospital bed. He texted that he deserved it after everything he had done for me. I sent back a single thumbs up. And when I walked out of the hospital the next morning, I already knew exactly what I was going to do next. I was 42 years old, and my life was a monument built on the absolute refusal to be weak or poor. Every dollar I had was proof. Proof that a girl from a working-class neighborhood who wore cheap suits and walked everywhere because she couldn't afford parking had successfully clawed her way into Portland's hyper-competitive commercial real estate market. My father had told me real estate was for rich people with connections. I had neither. Yet by age 35, I was closing multi-million-dollar deals on waterfront developments and office towers. That money, every single dollar of the $73,000.612 I had meticulously saved, represented 15 years of brutal 80-hour work weeks. It was the commission from the weekends I missed, the holidays I spent alone in the office, and the flu seasons I worked through because I couldn't afford to miss a commission. That savings account was my security, my independence. My promise to myself that I would never again be broke and scared. It was my emergency fund, my escape route. My proof that hard work actually meant something. And Caleb, my husband of 12 years, took all of it while I was dying. It happened on a Tuesday morning during what should have been a routine property showing. I had been ignoring the blinding headaches and the strange numbness in my right arm for weeks, blaming them on stress from a massive $2 million waterfront deal I was trying to close. I was Brielle West, successful, independent, and secure. I couldn't afford to be sick. I was standing in a gorgeous Victorian conversion, pointing out the original crown molding to 2 tech clients, when the pain hit. It wasn't a headache. It was a detonation. White, hot pain made my vision blur and my knees buckle. The numbness I had been ignoring exploded, spreading like fire down my right side. I tried to say, "Excuse me," but my mouth wouldn't cooperate. Only garbled, meaningless sounds came out. I collapsed onto the gleaming hardwood floor. The terror was primal, overwhelming, coming from the sickening realization that my body was no longer obeying my commands. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move my right side. I was utterly, catastrophically helpless. The young couple, Kyle and Emma, called 911. I remember the sirens, the frantic voices of the paramedics. The rush into Providence Hospital. They told me later that I had suffered an ischemic stroke. A clot blocked the blood flow to my brain. They performed emergency surgery, but my brain swelled dangerously. To save my life, they placed me in a medically induced coma. I flatlined twice during those first few hours. My heart stopped. Doctors had to bring me back. For 36 hours, I existed in a black void. A pause button on my life while professionals fought to keep me alive. While I lay there, unconscious, connected to machines, my future uncertain and my life hanging by a thread, Caleb acted. I woke up slowly, disoriented, like surfacing from deep water. The lights were too bright. My head was pounding. A tube had been removed from my throat, but my right side felt heavy and wrong. When I tried to speak, my words were slurred, thick and difficult. My body was broken. A doctor, Dr. Patel, explained everything: the stroke, the surgery, the coma, the coding twice. "You're very lucky to be alive," she said, warning me of months of slow, difficult recovery, physical therapy, speech therapy. No stress, no work for at least 6 weeks. Lucky. I reached for my phone with my working left hand. It lit up with notifications, emails, missed calls, and one text message from Caleb. Not, "Thank God you're alive," not, "I'm on my way." Just a single screenshot. It was an image of our joint savings account. The one where every commission I had ever earned went. The balance was $0. Below the screenshot, one sentence that changed everything. "I deserve this after everything I have done for you." He had robbed me. He had cleaned out the account while I was unconscious, while doctors were shocking my heart back to life. The coldness, the audacity, the perfect timing of the betrayal. It was breathtaking. I stared at the screen for a long time, my still, foggy brain struggling to process the extent of his calculated cruelty. I should have cried. I should have screamed. I should have demanded to see him, but the woman who did those things had just been burned away by the stroke and the betrayal. Instead, something cold, hard, and terrifyingly clear clicked into place deep inside me. I pulled up the keyboard with my left hand, typed one character, and hit send. A single thumbs up emoji. Caleb probably thought it meant I was broken, defeated, too brain damaged to understand. Or perhaps too grateful to be alive to fight back. He thought I had surrendered. He was completely wrong. That thumbs up wasn't acceptance. It was a declaration of war, ice cold and utterly precise. I am Brielle West. And this is the story of how I made my husband regret every single dollar he stole while I lay dying. The thumbs up sent. I knew I couldn't go home. Not to a man who thought I was too broken to fight. Dr. Paddle came back, clipboard in hand, explaining the next steps. "Mrs. West," she said, "you will need someone at home to help you for at least the first week or two. Simple tasks, cooking, cleaning, even getting dressed, will be challenging. Is your husband able to take time off work to care for you?" Something ice cold settled in my chest. I looked at the kind, concerned doctor, my words still slightly slurred but functional. "Yes," I lied, smoothly. "He's already arranged it. He should be here soon to pick me up." The lie was easier than the truth. The truth would involve explaining the empty bank account, the text message, and the sudden, terrifying certainty that the man I had married had just tried to financially destroy me at my lowest point. Vulnerability was catastrophe, and right now, I needed controlled movement. I needed a sanctuary. The moment Dr. Patel and the nurse left, I grabbed my phone with my left hand. My right was still too weak and heavy. And called the only person I trusted completely, my older sister, Riley Thompson. Riley picked up on the second ring. She was a brilliant tax attorney, sharp, composed, and ruthlessly efficient. She had been my emergency contact at the hospital. Not Caleb. Even before the betrayal, I had instinctively known who to trust when everything went wrong. "Brielle," she said, using my full name. Her voice was already tight with worry from the hospital's brief, alarming update. "Riley, I need a favor," I said quietly, watching the door. "Anything," she replied, without hesitation. "I need a place to stay. And I need you not to tell Caleb I'm out." The silence on the line stretched for 4 beats. "He doesn't know you're being discharged?" she finally asked. "Oh, he knows I survived," I said, my voice flat, holding the emotion back. "He just doesn't know I'm not coming home." Another long pause. When Riley spoke again, her voice had lowered, shifting from worried sister to focused professional. "What did he do?" "He cleaned out our savings while I was unconscious. $73,000 and 612 cents. Every penny I had." I heard her sharp intake of breath, a sudden, cold gasp that confirmed the horror was real. I'm on my way. 20 minutes. Where should I pick you up? Side entrance, near the emergency department. I'll be there in 15. Getting dressed was a humiliating reminder of what the stroke had stolen. I couldn't button my shirt with one working hand. The nurse had to help, her movements professional and kind, which only made the degradation worse. They gave me a cane, aluminum with a rubber grip. I hated it instantly, hated what it represented, my physical failure. But my right leg was dead weight, and I needed it to walk. I made my way slowly down to the side entrance. Each step was an effort. My leg dragged slightly, requiring intense focus. I sat on a bench. The cane propped beside me, watching the normal world move on, unconcerned with the shattered life of one woman. Riley's black Subaru pulled up 13 minutes later. She got out quickly. My sister was 3 years older, with the kind of sharp features and focused gray eyes that commanded respect in a boardroom. She came around, helped me into the passenger seat, and loaded my small bag. She looked at me, really looked, taking in the slurred speech, the cane, the fear masked by calculation in my eyes. I saw her face tighten, not with pity, but with barely contained fury. We didn't speak again until we were out of the hospital parking lot and driving through the gray, drizzling Portland afternoon. Tell me everything, she commanded. So I did. I told her about the headaches I ignored, the stroke, the surgery, the cold blackness of the coma, and waking up to that text message, the empty account, the thumbs up emoji I had sent. I explained that I needed her to be the legal mind. I couldn't be right now. That I couldn't trust anyone else. She listened with the absolute focus of someone cataloging evidence. She didn't interrupt, didn't ask clarifying questions, didn't offer a single curse word. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment, the windshield wipers slapping time against the betrayal. Then she said, very calmly, "We're going to destroy him." It wasn't a question. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a statement of fact that settled something volatile in my chest. Yeah, I replied, the word coming out clearer than I expected. We are. Riley's minimalist apartment in Northwest Portland felt safe and anonymous. She helped me up the stairs, a humiliating ordeal that took 15 minutes, and settled me in the spare room. Rest, she ordered. I need to make some calls. I lay on the bed, exhausted, but my mind wouldn't stop. I stared at the ceiling and replayed 12 years of marriage, searching for the signs I had missed. Caleb, the charming artist who had called himself my support system, who cooked dinner while I conquered the city, had been planning his exit strategy for years. I remembered the resentment that started small, wrapped in humor. Must be nice to be the successful one, he'd mutter. I remembered his sudden interest in our finances 3 years ago, asking about my accounts, my investments, how to access them. In case something happens, I had shut him down, but the seed was planted. I had been too tired, too focused on the next big deal, to manage my husband's feelings or question his increasing secrecy. I had let my focus on professional independence blind me to the emotional and financial vulnerability in my own home. I was a workaholic who had mistaken my husband's domestic support for partnership, when it was merely access. The moment I collapsed during that property showing, the moment I became utterly helpless, he executed his plan. He had gambled on my death or permanent incapacitation, and the thumbs up was the notification that he had lost the bet. I had survived, and now the war had begun. Riley's methodical unpacking of the banker's box, confirmed what I already knew. This wasn't panic. It was a plan 18 months in the making. I spent the first few days at Riley's focusing on the exercises the physical therapist had given me, clumsily squeezing a stress ball with my weak right hand, practicing slow, uneven steps with my cane across the hardwood floor. My body felt like a foreign country, but my mind was sharp, focused entirely on the betrayal. I knew I needed to be physically strong to fight, but the real fight was in the evidence. Around noon on the fourth day, Riley came home carrying a heavy cardboard banker's box. She set it on the dining table, the weight of the contents thudding loudly. "You're not going to like this," she said, her voice completely devoid of emotion. I sat down, my right leg still unsteady. "Show me." She opened the box and began pulling out stacks of paper, bank statements, credit reports, business filings, all cataloged and organized. She had called in favors, leveraged her legal connections. The same focus she used to win massive tax cases, she was now using for me. "This," she said, tapping a document with a highlighter, "is a business account opened 14 months ago. Brennan Creative Studios. The listed owners are Caleb West and Brielle West." I leaned forward. "I never signed anything for a business account." "I know," Riley confirmed. "That's fraud." She pointed to a section listing recent transactions. "Look at the transfers. $3,000 here, $5,000 there. Never more than $9,000 at once. Always under $10,000. I said slowly, the knowledge of his careful calculation making my stomach clench. "To avoid federal reporting requirements." Exactly. He was being meticulous. Riley pulled out a stack of statements, all marked with similar transfers. "From what I can track, he siphoned almost $89,000 into this account over 14 months. Then he moved it again. $89,000. On top of the $73,000 he stole while I was unconscious. Over $160,000 total." I gripped the edge of the table, struggling to process the scale of his calculated greed. This wasn't an argument over a few debts, this was systematic robbery. "It gets worse," Riley said, her eyes meeting mine. She handed me a document. I recognized a power of attorney form. I had signed a version of this a year ago, when I had a scare and thought I might need emergency surgery, limiting it strictly to medical decisions. "This one has been amended," Riley explained quietly. "Financial authority, investment accounts, real estate decisions. The signature looks perfect. But I cross-referenced it with contracts you signed for the waterfront deal. It's a forgery. A very good one, but a forgery." The room tilted. I stared at my name, perfectly reproduced. He had practiced my signature. He had sat in our home while I was working 80-hour weeks to pay for his life, and practiced writing my name until he could perfectly replicate the strokes that would legally destroy me. That realization, the intimacy of the betrayal, was a sickening, numb horror. Riley pulled up more statements from my investment portfolio. "He used that forged power of attorney to open a line of credit and take out another $70,000 against your investments. Cash withdrawals over the past 6 months, small amounts, staying under the radar. I felt physically ill. Every, 'I love you,' he had spoken. Every dinner he had cooked, every supportive comment about my career, had been a lie. It was all a performance. A distraction while he mapped my territory and plotted my financial destruction. And then there's this." Riley's phone buzzed. She'd been running a reverse image search on a tip from my old assistant. An image loaded slowly onto her laptop. "Caleb, looking too comfortable. Hand on the thigh of a young woman in a coffee shop booth. Vanessa Pute? Riley stated, pulling up a detailed profile. 26 years old. Gallery coordinator at Atelier Northwest. The gallery where Caleb had his last showing 8 months ago. Riley scrolled further. Pulling up Vanessa's Venmo transactions. He's been paying her rent. $1,500 a month, for the past 9 months. Look at the memo line's rent apartment. He wasn't even trying to hide it. We found photos on Vanessa's public Instagram profile. Caleb barely visible in the background, his distinctive turquoise ring holding a wine glass. A long weekend in San Francisco 6 weeks ago. A trip he had told me was an inspiration retreat, alone. Riley stopped on a recent photo. Vanessa holding up keys to a luxury loft downtown. The caption reading, "New chapter. Gallery coordinators don't afford $3,400 apartments." Riley said. No. I agreed. My voice a hollow echo. They don't. The pieces clicked into place, cold and sharp. The money wasn't just for him, it was for a new life. A younger woman, an exit strategy funded entirely by my years of brutal work. The stroke had interrupted his timeline. When I collapsed, he panicked. Grabbed the liquid cash, and prepared to run, betting I would die or be too damaged to fight. He was planning to leave you, take the money, and start fresh, Riley concluded. But I survived. I repeated. And now he's stuck. I looked at the massive pile of evidence spread across the table. The fraudulent accounts, the forged documents, the systematic theft over 18 months, the photos of his new life. The numbness faded, replaced by a terrible, clear resolve. What do we do with this? I asked, my voice steady. We file, Riley said, gathering the papers into neat, damning stacks. We find a lawyer who specializes in financial fraud within family law. And we use this to bury him. The evidence of his meticulous crime was now Martin Oi's problem. And my focus shifted entirely to the legal architecture of his downfall. Riley found Martin Oi, a family law attorney, through a contact at her firm. Martin's office was in a modest building downtown, functional and quiet. No marble lobby or fancy art, which I appreciated. He seemed to spend money on legal substance, not client appearances. He was built solid. A man in his late 40s with a direct gaze, and a slight Nigerian accent, who didn't waste a single word. He didn't comment on my cane or the slight tremor in my right hand, he just got straight to business. Mrs. West, he said, opening the folder Riley had sent ahead. I have reviewed the preliminary documents. Before we go further, I need to understand your primary objective. Everything, I said, without hesitation. I want everything he took back. And I want him to face consequences. Martin nodded, unperturbed by the request for total war. Your husband committed several felonious identity fraud, forgery on the power of attorney, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult during a medical crisis. The dollar amounts make this extremely serious. We can pursue criminal charges in addition to the divorce. What happens if we do both at once? I asked. It gets complicated, he explained, leaning forward. Criminal charges can actually slow down the divorce. His defense attorneys will advise him to plead the fifth. To not cooperate with discovery, not to provide financial documents. It makes it harder to get your assets back quickly. I thought about the money. The $160,000 he had stolen, the $7,300 and $612. I had worked 15 years for. Justice was important, but freedom was paramount. Divorce first, I concluded. Get my money back. Secure my home. Then, Criminal charges. Justice can wait a few months. But my life cannot. Martin studied me for a long moment, a slight smile touching his lips. Most people want the emotional satisfaction of the criminal case first. You want autonomy. I think we will work very well together, Mrs. West. We spent the next 2 hours going through the evidence. Martin was surgical, asking sharp questions, circling back to the exact timing of the fraudulent transfers. The timing matters, he stressed. The fact that he emptied the joint account while you were unconscious. That's not just morally reprehensible, it's legally significant. Financial exploitation during medical incapacity. Judges take that very seriously. He was especially interested in the forged power of attorney. That is identity fraud. Using it to access your investment accounts makes it federal wire fraud if any transactions crossed state lines, which I'm certain they did. Riley produced the evidence of the Brennan Creative Studios business account. The $89,000 transferred over 14 months. Always under $10,000 at a time. He knew the reporting thresholds. Martin confirmed, shaking his head slightly. This was planned. How much do you know about his current financial situation? Martin asked. Not much, I replied. He's been texting me. But I haven't responded. Good. Keep it that way. All communication goes through me from now on. We finalized the strategy. Martin would file immediately, requesting full financial disclosure, a SAS freeze on all joint and personal assets connected to Caleb, and temporary exclusive use of my condominium. It's not marital, I clarified. I bought it before we married. It's only in my name. Even better. That part is simple. Martin closed his folder. One final thing. Are you prepared for this to get ugly? Because when we file, with this evidence, he is going to fight back hard. I thought about the stroke, about lying helpless in that bed, about the text message. I deserve this. Let him fight, I said, the cold certainty returning. I am ready. We filed for divorce 3 days later. Martin submitted a petition, citing irreconcilable differences, and requesting the immediate return of all fraudulently obtained funds. Attached were copies of everything: the statements, the forged power of attorney, the documentation of the secret business account. It was thorough, damning, and irrefutable evidence of a systematic crime committed within the marriage. Caleb's response, filed by a lawyer named Doug Finch, was almost comical. Finch specialized in DUIs and small claims disputes. Clearly out of his depth. He filed a counter-petition requesting a 50-50 split of all assets, including my condo and investment accounts. His justification: Caleb had contributed equally to the marriage as a household manager and emotional support provider. Martin actually laughed when he read it. He stole over $160,000, and his lawyer is claiming homemaker equity. This won't work. But it will drag the process out while they scramble for a better strategy. How long? I asked. A couple of months, probably. Discovery, depositions. Maybe a settlement conference. Good, I said. Let it drag. Martin looked confused. Most clients want this over quickly. I want him to make mistakes, I said. Desperate people do stupid things. Let him scramble. Let him realize exactly how trapped he is. Understanding dawned on Martin's face. I wasn't just seeking justice. I was orchestrating a controlled demolition, waiting for the structural collapse. And for the first time since waking up in that hospital bed, I felt a surge of satisfaction. I was back in control, and Caleb was about to face the consequences of underestimating the woman he had tried to bury. With every account frozen, the flow of desperate, panicked texts from Caleb began. A symphony of a man realizing his escape hatch was sealed. For 3 days after Martin filed the motion, my phone buzzed incessantly. Caleb's messages shifted dramatically. First, they were confused. Caleb. What is this? Why did the lawyer freeze our account? Then, they turned frantic. This is insane, I can't even buy groceries. We need to talk. Finally. They became angry and accusatory. You're destroying everything out of spite. I made a mistake, but this is cruel. I ignored every single one. Riley had confirmed with her banking contacts that every account with his name on it was locked solid. The stolen money was inaccessible. He was financially marooned. He couldn't pay his bills. He couldn't finance his new life. He was trapped. 2 days before our first major court hearing, Riley's phone rang. It was an unknown number, but Riley put it on speaker. Hello? Riley answered, her tone strictly professional. Is this Riley Thompson? A young woman's voice, shaking badly. Who's asking? My name is Vanessa. I don't know who else to call. Caleb said you're his wife's sister. Please, I need help. Riley's face went completely still, colder than I had ever seen it. I'm listening. Caleb said his accounts got frozen because of his wife. He can't pay my rent. I'm going to get evicted. I didn't know. He said they were separated. He said the divorce was almost final. I didn't know he was stealing from her. The desperation in her voice was entirely real. She probably truly believed every calculated lie Caleb had fed her. Vanessa, Riley said, her voice like ice, each syllable perfectly measured. Caleb is a liar and a thief. Whatever he told you about his marriage, about being separated, about his wife being cruel, all fiction. He stole over $160,000 from my sister while she was unconscious in a hospital bed. He used that money to pay your rent, buy you things, and plan a future with you. The silence on the line was absolute. If you're smart, Riley continued, her voice gaining the authority. She used to shred witnesses on the stand. You'll distance yourself from him immediately before you become an accessory to fraud, before your name ends up in legal documents as a co-conspirator. Do you understand? I didn't know. Vanessa whispered, sobbing. I swear I didn't know. Then get away from him now. Before this gets worse. Riley hung up, cutting the connection with a decisive click. I looked at Riley. A strange sense of something close to pity for the young woman mixing with a powerful, satisfying clarity. Caleb's fantasy had just been dismantled over a simple phone call. He was without money, without sanctuary, and now, without his mistress. He's panicking, I said. Good, Riley replied. Let him panic. 6 weeks after the stroke, we had our first major court hearing. By then, I had regained most of my physical ability. My speech was nearly back to normal. The tremor in my right hand only showed when I was tired. I could walk without the cane if I concentrated. But Martin had been clear about strategy. Bring the cane. He'd instructed. You don't have to lean on it, but carry it. It's a visual reminder of what happened to you and what he did while you were vulnerable. I dressed carefully that morning, a navy blue suit, the same one I had worn to close my last big deal. It felt like armor. I looked put together, professional, and strong, but the cane served its purpose. Reminding the world, and me, that I had been a victim who fought her way back. The courthouse was downtown, a grand, echoing building. Martin met us outside the courtroom, calm and confident. Judge Torres is fair. She doesn't tolerate games. And she certainly doesn't like people who take advantage of vulnerable spouses. Caleb was already there, sitting at the opposite table with Doug Finch, his inexperienced lawyer. Caleb looked terrible. He was pale, unshaven, and wore a jacket that didn't quite fit. The man who claimed he deserved my money looked utterly broken. When I walked in, my cane clicking on the marble floor, he tried to catch my eye. I walked past him without a glance, keeping my face strictly forward. Judge Angela Torres, a sharp woman in her 50s, wasted no time. Mr. Finch, she said, looking down at the documents. Your client withdrew $73,612 from joint accounts while Mrs. West was hospitalized for a life-threatening stroke. Is that correct? Doug Finch stood up, looking nervous. Your Honor. My client exercised his legal right to access jointly held funds. Furthermore, Mrs. West had exhibited financially controlling behavior, and my client was acting to protect himself from potential. Protect himself from what, exactly? Judge Torres interrupted, her voice gaining an edge. From a woman having a stroke. Martin stood smoothly. Your Honor, if I may, the property in question is not a marital asset. Mrs. West purchased that condominium before the marriage, paid the mortgage exclusively from pre-marital accounts. Mr. West has no legal claim to it whatsoever. West has no legal claim to it whatsoever. The judge turned her attention to Caleb. Mr. West. Answer the question yourself. Did you visit your wife while she was hospitalized for a stroke that nearly killed her? Caleb stood, his hands shaking visibly. No. Your Honor. But you did access her bank accounts during that time. Yes. Judge Torres removed her glasses and looked at him with an expression that could only be described as contempt. Let me make sure I understand the timeline here. Your wife of 12 years suffered a catastrophic medical emergency, and during that time, you did not visit her, did not check on her condition, but you did withdraw over $70,000 from her accounts, while she was unconscious and unable to consent. It was a statement of fact, damning when spoken aloud in the quiet courtroom. Your Honor, if I may. Doug Finch stammered. You may not. Judge Torres cut him off. I am ordering an immediate, absolute freeze on all accounts connected to either party pending full investigation. This includes all joint funds, the fraudulent business account, and any personal accounts held by Mr. West. A wave of cold satisfaction washed over me. Caleb went visibly paler. Additionally, the judge continued, Mrs. West is granted temporary exclusive possession of the marital residence. Mr. West. You have 72 hours to remove your personal belongings. She looked directly at Caleb one last time. Mr. West. I strongly suggest you cooperate fully. Withdrawing tens of thousands of dollars, while your spouse is medically incapacitated, is unconscionable. You are fortunate I am not recommending criminal charges at this time. She banged the gavel once. Next hearing in 30 days. We are adjourned. As we filed out, Caleb tried desperately to catch my eye. I walked past him without acknowledgement, my cane clicking steadily on the marble floor. I had not won a battle, I had simply finished the first, clean cut. The judge's order had trapped him in Portland. But the discovery of his passport application revealed he was desperate enough to make a catastrophic mistake. 2 weeks after the court hearing, I was doing my morning physical therapy routine in Riley's living room, awkwardly trying to balance on my left leg, when Riley's phone rang. I heard her voice shift in her home office, instantly going from casual sister to sharp attorney. Are you sure? She asked into the phone. Then send me everything. I'll call you back. She emerged moments later, her expression grim. Caleb just applied for a passport. Expedited processing. 2-week turnaround. I stopped mid-exercise, my balance forgotten. He's planning to run. That's what I thought. Riley confirmed. So I did some digging. Remember that old tablet you both used for grocery lists and shared calendars? It's still at the apartment. And it's still syncing to the cloud, including his email and browser history. I sat down slowly, the adrenaline instantly wiping away any lingering fatigue. What did you find? Riley turned her laptop toward me. The screen was a damning timeline of Caleb's recent searches: non-extradition countries, Mexico residency requirements, how to open offshore bank accounts, and international wire transfers under $10,000. He had been looking for an exit strategy since the moment the judge froze his assets. He thinks he can trick the court into unfreezing enough money to run, I surmised. He thinks he can access the stolen funds somewhere else. Exactly, Riley said, closing the laptop. And I think we should let him try. I looked at her, confused by the suggestion of passive allowance. What do you mean? Would give him rope? Riley explained, her eyes hard. Let him think he's getting away with it. Then we catch him in the act. We want him to commit a crime so obvious, so documented, so impossible to deny that he can't talk his way out of it. We called Martin immediately and laid out the plan. It was simple, cold, and brilliant. We file a motion requesting limited release of funds. Martin explained, nodding along with the strategy. $10,000. Just enough to cover Caleb's basic living expenses while the divorce proceeds. Food, rent, necessities. The judge will grant it. It seems reasonable. And the moment that money hits Caleb's account, Riley interjected, we track every transaction. If he moves it offshore, if he tries to hide it, if he does anything except use it for legitimate necessities, we have him for fraud, contempt of court, and federal wire fraud. We filed the motion the next day. Martin kept the language simple, emphasizing that Caleb literally had no access to funds for food or basic rent. The judge, viewing it as a reasonable compromise for basic sustenance, granted the order within 24 hours. $10,000 released to Caleb's primary checking account, conditional on it being used only for necessary living expenses. The money cleared on a Thursday morning at exactly 9 o'clock. Riley and I were sitting at her dining table, the laptop open between us, watching the account refresh in real time. There it is, Riley said, pointing to the screen. 10,000 just cleared. We waited. 10 minutes. 15. Then the first transaction appeared. Transfer as $10,000 from checking to Brennan Creative Studios business account. He moved it immediately, I said, trying to hide it from the court order. Thinks the business account is safer. 5 minutes later, another transfer. $10,000 from the business account to his secret personal account at a different bank. The one Riley had uncovered that he used to pay Vanessa's rent. He was consolidating the money into his private escape fund. We waited an hour. I was starting to think maybe he would sit on the money, that the sight of the cash would make him cautious, that he might resist the temptation to make a second, fatal mistake. Then the new transaction appeared, and my breath caught. Wire transfer. Sex $8,500 to West Banco Internal Dizes. Offshore account, Riley said quietly, clicking a rapid series of screenshots. That's international wire fraud. That's a federal crime. She immediately forwarded the evidence to Martin and called him, putting the phone on speaker. He just wired money to Bice, she stated, without preamble. Martin was silent for a moment on the line. That's it. Federal felony. I'm contacting the Federal Bureau of Investigation. How fast can they move? Fast, Riley said. Especially with evidence this clear. Give them 2 hours. She hung up. We sat in the silence, staring at the laptop screen. He had actually done it. He had fallen for the trap. Mistaking the limited funds for his opportunity to escape. He was desperate, and desperate people make stupid decisions. Over the next hour, Riley monitored the account. More transactions appeared. Caleb had booked 2 flights to West Cabo San Lucas, departing in 3 days on a Saturday morning. He had a hotel reservation at a beachfront resort. He was planning to run, to meet Vanessa there, and somehow access the offshore account. Martin called back 2 hours later. The FBI is involved. They've issued a warrant. They're going to arrest him at the airport before he boards. When? I asked. His flight is Saturday morning at noon. They'll take him at the gate. I want to be there, I said suddenly. The desire was overwhelming. I needed to see it. Needed to see him realize his perfect crime had only paved the road to his downfall. Riley looked at me, her expression unreadable. Martin hesitated on the phone. It's not standard, but you're not interfering. Just watching. I don't see why not. You deserve to see the end of this. Brielle. The morning of his flight, I sat in Riley's car, watching the departure gates, ready to witness the moment Caleb's catastrophic mistake finally cost him his freedom. Saturday morning was crisp and clear. Riley and I drove to Portland International Airport, parking in the structure that gave us a clear, panoramic view of the departure's curb and the automatic glass doors. We sat in the Subaru, drinking lukewarm coffee from a drive-thru, watching travelers come and go with the cheerful energy of people heading toward vacation and normalcy. Our normalcy had died on the floor of a Victorian conversion. My stomach was tight, not with fear, but with an intense, cold anticipation. I was wearing sunglasses, hidden in plain sight, a spectator to the final scene of a terrible play. At exactly 11:47 in the morning, I saw them. Caleb and Vanessa walked through the sliding glass doors, each pulling a suitcase. Vanessa looked excited, young, and entirely oblivious. Dressed for the Mexican sun in a bright sundress and sandals, despite the Portland December chill. She was laughing at something Caleb said. Her head tilted back. Caleb looked nervous. He was wearing a slightly too tight blazer and kept scanning the crowd, constantly turning his head, as if he felt the weight of unseen eyes, but couldn't identify the threat. He knew, on some level, that he was cutting it too close. Then I saw the 2 men. They wore dark, functional suits and moved with the controlled purpose of federal law enforcement. They weren't rushing, they were simply moving, efficiently and directly, toward Caleb and Vanessa. They approached them just as Caleb was dropping his suitcase to check his phone. The agents flashed their badges. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw Caleb's face change. The color draining from his skin. The look of panic replacing forced confidence. It was the face of a man who realized the ground had disappeared beneath him. Vanessa looked confused, her smile dissolving. She started asking questions, pointing at Caleb, her voice rising in protest. One agent spoke calmly to her, isolating her from the man they were about to take. Then, they handcuffed Caleb. Right there, in the middle of the crowded departure terminal. Surrounded by the cheerful chaos of holiday travel, my husband was placed under federal arrest for wire fraud. Travelers stopped. Phones came out. A small, fascinated crowd formed around the scene. The agents led Caleb away. He was saying something, probably trying to explain, to justify. To make this seem like a terrible misunderstanding. But the words were useless against the cold reality of the steel cuffs. Vanessa crumpled onto a nearby bench, burying her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with full, desperate sobs. I watched all of this from Riley's car with a strange, profound sense of detachment. It felt like I was watching an elaborate, satisfying movie instead of the destruction of my marriage and the collapse of my husband's life. "You okay?" Riley asked quietly. Her eyes focused on my profile. "I don't know," I said honestly. I thought I would feel triumph, fire, a burst of righteous victory. Instead, I felt only a cold, quiet completion. The work was done. The mechanism of justice, which I had painstakingly engineered, had executed its function perfectly. He had tried to steal my life while I was unconscious, and now, he was losing his freedom while I watched. It was the perfect, symmetrical consequence. We waited a few more minutes, watching Vanessa eventually pull herself together, grab her suitcase, and walk back out of the terminal, mascara streaked down her face. She was collateral damage, a young woman who had believed a charming liar. Riley started the car. "Let's go home," I said. That evening, back at Riley's apartment, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost sent it to voicemail. But I knew who it was. I answered. "Hello. Is this Brielle?" It was Vanessa's voice, thick with tears and exhaustion. "It is." I didn't know. The words rushed out, desperate and pleading. "I swear to God, I didn't know he was stealing from you. He told me you were separated. That the divorce was almost final. That you had been controlling and cruel for years." I sat on the couch, the phone pressed to my ear, listening to the girl sob. She was just a kid, caught up in a lie that had suddenly turned criminal. "Vanessa," I said, my voice quiet but utterly clear. "Did Caleb ever pay for anything himself? Dinners, trips, your rent?" Silence, then a small, shaky voice. "No. He said his money was tied up in art investments. That it would be liquid soon." "It was my money," I said. "All of it. Every dinner you ate. Every trip you took. Every month of rent he paid for your apartment. That was money he stole from me, while I was working 80-hour weeks to support him. While I was having a stroke and nearly dying. More crying. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. What do I do now?" I took a deep breath. This was the part where the strategist had to become the mentor, or at least, the one delivering the final lesson. "You move on," I said. "You find someone honest. You learn from this. And you never, ever trust someone who mouths their spouse to justify why they're starting something with you. That's always a red flag." "I feel so stupid," she whispered. "You were lied to. That's not the same as being stupid." The compassion was distant, but genuine. I wasn't cold enough to destroy the innocent. "Did you know about the fraud, the stolen money, the offshore accounts?" "No. I swear I didn't." "Then you're probably fine. But distance yourself from Caleb immediately. Don't take his calls. Don't visit him. Don't try to help him. He'll drag you down with him if you let him." "Okay," she said, her voice small. "Thank you." I hung up before she could say anything else. I had given her the truth and the path to self-preservation. That was enough. Riley came out of her room, having listened to the one-sided conversation. "That was her. Do you believe her?" "Yeah, I do," I confirmed. "She's just a kid who made bad choices. She's not a criminal. Kinder than I would have been," Riley said, sitting beside me. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from Martin. "Caleb's been charged. Federal custody. Bail hearing Monday. You don't need to attend. I typed back instantly, without hesitation. I'll be there. Because I needed to see this through. All of it, every cold, calculated step, right to the bitter end. With Caleb in custody and the legal battle settled, I was free. But freedom felt less like celebration, and more like the beginning of a cold, quiet life I had to build from scratch. The bail hearing on Monday was anticlimactic. Caleb's public defender argued for release. Martin countered with the undeniable evidence of flight. Risk, the offshore account, the booked flights to Cabo, the expedited passport application. The judge denied bail. Caleb would stay in federal custody until his trial. I watched from the gallery as they led him out in handcuffs. He looked utterly broken, smaller, like the reality of the fraud, and the consequences, had finally crushed the entitled artist persona. I still refused to meet his gaze. The divorce finalized 3 months later. By then, Caleb's federal charges were resolved through a plea deal. Martin had convinced him that fighting was pointless. The evidence was overwhelming: forged documents, fraudulent wire transfers, international banking violations. He was looking at years in prison if convicted on all counts. The plea deal gave him 5 years probation and full restitution of every dollar stolen, totaling $162,000, to be paid in monthly installments that he would likely spend the rest of his life working off. He also received a permanent criminal record and a restraining order, keeping him 500 feet from me at all times. Martin had been merciless in the divorce settlement. With the guilty plea on federal charges, there was no defense against the fraud claims. I got everything: the condo, my investment accounts untouched and returned, and every penny Caleb had stolen or tried to hide. He got nothing: no assets, no claims, just debt and consequences. The last time I saw him was at the final hearing. He looked hollowed out, wearing an ill-fitting suit. When the judge finalized everything, Caleb's lawyer asked for a brief moment. "Your Honor," she said, "my client would like to apologize to Mrs. West for his actions." The judge looked at me. "Mrs. West, would you like to hear it?" Everyone in the courtroom turned. Riley was tense beside me. Martin waited, ready to object. I thought about the man who had abandoned me for dead, who had plotted for 18 months to steal my security, who thought he deserved the money I had nearly killed myself to earn. "No," I said simply, clearly. "I wouldn't." The judge nodded, firm and quick. "Then we're done here. Divorce is finalized." Caleb was escorted out. I walked out a different exit with Riley and Martin. "How do you feel?" Riley asked as we walked to the parking garage. "Empty," I said, and it was true. There was no satisfaction, no triumph. Just a hollow sense of absolute completion. I moved back into the condominium a week later. Caleb had already cleared out his few belongings. I walked through rooms that felt both familiar and foreign. The spare room where his art supplies and dusty canvases used to sit was empty now. The space felt clean, sterilized, but lonely. It should have felt like victory, but it felt like a battlefield after the smoke has cleared. I lasted 6 months before deciding to sell. The condo was too full of ghosts of the woman I had been. The one who had ignored the warning signs, who had worked herself into a stroke, who had thought love was enough. A young family bought it. I watched the wife's face light up at the kitchen, the husband calculating their future in his head, and their toddler running through the empty rooms laughing. I hoped they would build something real. I bought a smaller, modern loft in Northwest Portland, closer to Riley. 2 bedrooms, floor to ceiling windows, exposed brick. Impersonal. No history. No ghosts. Just clean space waiting for me to decide who I would be next. With some of the money from the sale, I set up a scholarship fund in partnership with a local nonprofit that helped women recovering from medical crisis. I called it the Second Chances Fund. It offered $5,000 annually for women who needed financial support to rebuild their lives after health problems. Derailed everything. It felt good. It felt like something meaningful was finally emerging from the wreckage. I returned to work part-time about 7 months after the stroke. I couldn't work 80-hour weeks anymore. I couldn't ignore my body's signals. I was more selective about clients, charged more, worked less, and made enough. I was different. I was bounded. I was comfortable saying no. One evening, nearly a year after the divorce finalized, Riley and I were having dinner. She asked the question that hung between us. Do you ever think about forgiving him? I set down my fork. I don't think about him at all anymore, I said honestly. Forgiveness feels like it requires me to care. And I just don't. That's not the same as healing, Riley pointed out gently. I know. I conceded. But maybe healing doesn't mean forgiveness. Maybe it just means moving forward without carrying the weight of what happened. Are you happy? The question surprised me. I looked at Riley, the woman who had given me sanctuary and helped me orchestrate the cold, clean justice that saved my life. She was the one connection that felt unshattered. I'm free, I said finally. And right now, that's close enough to happy. Riley smiled, raised her wine glass. To freedom. I clinked my glass against hers. To freedom. I am 43 years old now. I am harder, less trusting, and more cynical about people's motives. The woman who believed hard work and optimism were enough is gone. The stroke burned her away. The betrayal finished the job. But what remained was something stronger. Caleb thought my stroke was his opportunity. He thought my vulnerability made me an easy target. He was wrong. That single thumbs up emoji I sent from the hospital bed was not surrender. It was a cold, quiet declaration. I see you, I know what you did, and I already won.